Last night I couldn't sleep because the moon didn't move. That's right. It didn't move across the night sky like it normally does. I could see that it was the same distance from my bedroom window as it had been when I looked out at it the evening before. Now, I'm not an astronomer. I don't know a whole lot about the moon, but I do know that it's supposed to move across the sky in an arc over the course of a night. I could be wrong about that, but I think I'm not. And if I am, then someone please correct me in the comments below, because I'd rather be wrong than right. So last night, the moon wasn't where it should have been. It was too high in the sky. It was also too bright. And these two things combined filled me with a sense of dread, a sense of hopelessness, a sense of impending doom. It's weird how the moon can affect us so much, isn't it? A full moon can bring about all sorts of crazy behavior. People go wild. They run around doing stuff they wouldn't normally do. Some people even kill other people under the light of a full moon. There's something about that celestial orb up there that just brings out the worst in people and animals. But it's not just the full moon. Any phase of the moon can cause all sorts of problems. A crescent moon, for instance, is often seen as a bad omen. A waning crescent, especially so. In fact, in some cultures, seeing a waning crescent moon is considered such a bad omen that you should uneven acknowledge it when you see one. You're supposed to turn away immediately so that the bad luck doesn't find you. Superstitious nonsense, of course. But still, I wonder what it is about the moon that has inspired so many superstitions, so many myths and legends over the years. I mean, we've always been fascinated by the moon. It's the one constant in our skies that we can rely on. Sure, the sun comes up every morning and the stars twinkle above us at night. But the moon is always there between the two of them. As soon as the sun dips below the horizon, the moon takes its place. Then as soon as the moon is full, it begins to shrink until it disappears altogether, only to start growing again the following night. This cycle continues endlessly. We can always count on the moon to be in the sky. And it's because of this reliability that we used to tell the time by the phases of the moon long before we had wristwatches or smartphones to tell the time by. Farmers would use the phases of the moon to tell when they should plant their crops. Lovers would use the phases of the moon to tell when their fortunes might change. And scientists would use the phases of the moon to tell, well, pretty much everything, actually, because the phases of the moon were once thought to influence everything. Back then, it was believed that the moon caused the tides, the seasons, even earthquakes. But now we know that most of those things aren't caused by the moon. We know that it's really just a big ball of rock floating through space. It's nothing more, nothing less. Except last night, something was definitely wrong with the moon. I'm not a scientist, so I can't tell you exactly what was wrong with it. But I can tell you that the way it was hanging in the night sky like a malevolent god looking down on the world was enough to make anyone feel small. The truth is, I've always found comfort in knowing that the moon is just a big ball of rock. It's cold and lifeless. It can't hurt us, and it certainly can't watch us. But last night, it seemed as though the moon was taking on a life of its own. It was moving too slowly. It was stuck. And whatever was happening up there in the sky filled me with an indescribable sense of dread. Of course, the moon didn't actually move. I know that now. It was probably just a cloud that passed in front of it. But at the time, I didn't know that, and so I sat in my bed staring out into the darkness, wondering what was going on. I'm ashamed to admit how long I spent sitting there watching the moon. I'm a grown man, for crying out loud. I have responsibilities. I have bills to pay, places to be. Yet here I was sitting in my bed, unable to take my eyes off the moon. And then I started thinking, what if the moon really was stuck? What if it stopped moving altogether and just stayed in the sky in one position forever? Would the earth freeze? Would it be plunged into eternal darkness? Would humanity eventually die off, leaving the moon as the ruler of a dead planet? Okay, so maybe that last part is a bit dramatic, but I was scared. Okay, I know that now. But at the time, I was really scared. And the more I thought about what would happen if the moon got stuck in the sky, the more convinced I became that it really was getting stuck. Then I remembered that scene from the movie Don't Look Up. Do you remember that? In that movie, there's a comet that's hurtling towards Earth and no one seems to care. And there's this one character who keeps insisting that the comet is actually a good thing because it'll save us from ourselves. He's so sure of himself, so adamant that the comet is going to save us all, that in the end it does. And he's proven right. But not before causing total havoc and destruction on a global scale. But the comet is kind of like the moon in that movie, because just before it hits the Earth, it stops moving. it gets stuck in the sky. That's when the world realizes how close they've come to disaster. Maybe that's what was happening with our moon. Maybe it had gotten stuck, and we just hadn't realized it yet. Then I started wondering how long I had left to live. Of course, the moon did eventually start moving, continued its arc across the night sky like it always does. And as soon as it did, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I was safe. Humanity was safe. Everything was fine. But I still can't help but wonder why the moon didn't move last night. I wonder what would have happened if it hadn't moved at all. The truth is, I don't want to know. I'm just glad it didn't happen. Sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day, in the mundane aspects of life, that we forget to look up at the stars. We forget that there's a whole universe out there full of wonders and mysteries. Sometimes, just sometimes, that universe reaches back and grabs us by the scruff of our necks and reminds us that we are just small, insignificant creatures in the grand scheme of things. That's what happened to me last night. I was reminded of just how small I am in comparison to the universe. And you know what? It's a good feeling. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be hit by a rogue asteroid or get crushed by a planet. But I do like knowing that there's something bigger than me out there. Something that can remind me that I'm not as important as I think I am. After all, we spend our entire lives worrying about the little things, don't we? Things that ultimately don't matter. It's things that are meaningless in the grand scheme of things. So it's nice to be reminded of that every now and then. So thanks, Moon, for reminding me of that last night. Even though I was scared, even though I spent the whole night worrying about what would happen if you stopped moving, I'm still glad I got to experience it. Something that I'll never forget, and I hope that none of you ever get to experience it either. Oh wait, no, I take that back. I want you to experience it too. I want us all to experience it together, because it's not just a scary thing, it's also a humbling thing. And we could all use a little bit of humbling sometimes. So next time you're outside and you look up at the moon, just remember that it doesn't belong to us. It's just a rock floating through space, and we're just lucky enough to have it in our sky. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I upload new creepy stories every single day. You can also listen to my audio podcast by searching for my channel on various platforms.